My name is Paul Wolliver. I'm the owner of Pinellas Power Products, and this is my extended runtime fuel kit for the single phase open frame generators that run the 999cc Ducar engine. On this video, I'll be demonstrating it on the Powerhorse 27,000. The same exact engine is used on the Westinghouse 20,000 watt generator and probably other generators that I'm not aware of yet. As with all my other kits, when you have my extended run fuel kit installed, you can run it off the stock tank as though there was no differences. The stock tank is still totally functional and it absolutely runs the same way it always did. You move the fuel selector valve to the on position, pull out the choke, start the generator. I'm not going to start it in here because this thing is loud. But at any rate, you'd start it and then slowly push in on the choke. And then go ahead and use the generator. With my kit, you would take the additional fitting that's included in the kit and put it, either screw it into the top of your marine style fuel tank or attach it to a fuel caddy or whatever type of fuel tank you were using. And I'll touch on that more later. Then you would take the hose that is also included in the kit, and you'll notice that there's an arrow on the hose that indicates the direction of fuel flow. On the end of the hose that connects to the generator, there's an arrow, and on the end of the hose that should be connected to the fuel tank, there's an icon of a fuel tank. So it makes it extremely unlikely that anybody would hook the hose up backwards, but if you did hook it up backwards, the kit will not run because there are two check valves in here. So the first step would be to take the hose, connect the fuel tank end to the fuel tank. Incidentally, the hose is 3 meters long, so it'll allow you to put the remote tank at a distance of 3 meters from the generator. Then take the end with the arrow on it and connect it to the generator. If your fuel tank has a manual fuel valve, go ahead and open the manual fuel valve. And if your remote tank has a manual fuel tank vent, go ahead and open the fuel tank vent, because as it sucks gasoline out of the generator, it's going to need to put air into the vent. So once you've got it hooked up, you'll move the fuel valve to the on position. When you first hooked it up, this hose was full of air. And what you need to do is, by opening up the fuel tank vent, now when you pump the prime bulb, it's sucking fuel out of the remote tank and filling the hose with fuel and pumping it into the generator's tank. And what that's doing is it's just working all the air bubbles out of the system. So once you get all the air bubbles out, you can either shut the fuel selector valve off now, or you can go ahead and start the generator and then shut the fuel selector valve off. The kit comes with a decal with the instructions for running off the remote kit, and that's why I say that you can either shut it off now or shut it off once it's running. But keep in mind that anytime the fuel selector valve is in the on position, it's running off the stock tank, regardless of whether the remote tank is hooked up. So if you got the fuel selector valve in the on position, which would be like this, and you're running off the stock tank, when the stock tank is empty, it's then going to suck air out of the stock tank and stall. So if you shut the fuel selector valve off, it'll be pulling fuel from the remote tank. So at any rate, once you've got it all hooked up and bleed the fuel or bleed the air out of the system, you would go ahead and start it as you normally do. Pull out on the choke, turn the key to start it, and slowly push in on the choke as it warms up. The fuel fittings for my kit are Yamaha style fuel fittings. So if you need to replace one in an emergency, you now know that it's a Yamaha style fuel fitting. Do not attempt to use the Mercury style fuel fittings. While they do look the same, they're about 15 thousandths of an inch shorter on the Schrader port. So when you hook my hose to it, it will not depress this relief valve, so it won't flow any fuel, and that'll be very frustrating. I do sell replacement fuel fittings, replacement fuel hoses, and other replacement parts on my website separately. If you choose to go with several small tanks, like say you're using 6-gallon marine fuel tanks, and you line up 4 of them, keep in mind that my fuel kit comes with enough fittings for 1 tank. So if you buy a fuel kit and you're going to have 4 tanks that you're going to rotate between, you need to order 3 additional fuel fittings. And you put a fitting in top of each tank, and say if tank number 1, as it gets empty, you'd unsnap from tank number 1 and connect to tank number 2. As long as you unsnapped from tank number 1 and connected to tank number 2, before the first tank got totally empty, you will not need to purge the air from the system again. If you run tank number 1 completely empty and it sucks air through the hose and stalls, then you'll need to move the hose to tank number 2 and do the air purge again to get all the air out of the fuel line, and you'll be good to go. You can rotate between as many tanks as you want. Keep the tanks on level ground and keep the generator on level ground. That way neither one of them is prone to fall. The only reason why I've got this generator up against or up on this cart is because the generator is literally so large with the wheels installed that it will not fit through the door of my shop. So I had to take the wheels off and put it up here on this cart. This generator, being 27,000 watts, is big enough to use as a home backup generator, at which point it is entirely conceivable that you'll be using, a 100-gallon remote fuel tank. If you've got it all set up in a remote shed or something like that, obviously because of carbon monoxide poisoning, you don't want to run it in your garage or anything else. But if you have a dedicated generator shed with fuel in it and the generator and buried pipes underground or buried wires underground and so forth, it is conceivable, yes, I would understand then why you'd leave this thing hooked up. And at that point, if you hooked everything up and never disconnected it, you would not need to reprime the system then either. That covers the basics of it. Obviously, I'm not going to start it up in this room to demonstrate that because of the fact that it is so loud. If you've got any other questions or comments, in the description section of this video, right below, it has a link to my website where you can go and read all the product information. You can watch the fine-tuning and troubleshooting video. You can watch the installation instruction video. You can watch the product demo video. I've also got a video with a demonstration that explains why the through-the-cap gravity systems are so dangerous and what the inherent flaws are. I encourage you to watch that to become more educated about it. If you do choose to buy one of the gravity feed systems, please start it up on a concrete driveway or something, away from your house, away from valuables and so forth. So if you are one of the people that has their generator burst into flames from running it, you'll be able to get the situation under control before it does any damage to your car or your house or anything like that. But I encourage you to watch my video on why I do not use the through-the-cap system and why I use the system that I do with the fuel transfer pump. I think that just about covers it, and I thank you for your time.